everybody, welcome to episode 16 of Comedically Hardheaded. You know, life is funny because life, in my opinion, is pretty much a collection of experiences. Some good, some bad, some hilarious, some sad, some life-changing, just some that you can't even explain. And I think those experiences are what make our personality. You know, it's what builds your sense of humor, or lack thereof. It's pretty much what creates the space in which you are in internally over time. You know, those experiences that you have are what define your personality. And for me, I think one of the experiences I had that really somewhat probably built my humor, I guess, would definitely be the 3 years that I lived in Italy as a child. So we're going to dive into that era. Now, I can't put this all in one podcast because it's too much to cover. So this will be the episode of the first year that we lived in Italy. So here we go. So it is the summer of 1996, and life is great. Mainly because I'm only getting ready to go to third grade, so you don't really have a care in the world at that age. You know, everything is gravy. You're 8 years old. You get to play outside all day and then, you know, come inside and watch All Road Monsters on Nickelodeon and eat whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about getting acne, and all is well. The only thing you have to worry about is making sure you make your bed and you keep your room clean and you don't get in trouble at school. But hey, it's the summer, so there's no school to get in trouble in. So life was great. And I remember I was in my room, and all of a sudden I hear, "Michael!" And I'm like, huh? And if you had parents like mine, if your parents called you and you said, huh, they wouldn't answer back. They just wanted you to come and see what they wanted. So you, Michael! Huh? 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 And then you go and stuff down and say, "What do you want, man?" You be talking all this trash under your breath. And then I get downstairs, huh? Me and your father got to tell you something. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And they were like, I just got orders. I'm going to be moving positions, which means we're going to be moving to Italy. And for me, I didn't know what that meant. Because one, I never even heard of Italy, let alone anything in Europe. The only thing in Europe I might have known might have been England, maybe Germany. I'd never heard of any other place in the world. Like, I just knew the United States. I knew the United States, you know, maybe the continent of Africa. I just knew it as Africa, and China and Japan and Australia, you know, a few little countries. I had never heard of Italy in my life. And I'm looking at her like, huh? For what? Why are we moving? I don't want to move. Because for me, at the time, life was great. And this would be the one time I admit that at the time, I loved being in Spanaway, Washington. It was the greatest thing ever at the time. And so I didn't want to leave. And plus, like, I liked my school, because this was the second school I was going to. And I liked my teachers. I had this teacher named Mr. Burke, who was one of the coolest teachers I've ever had. Now, by the way, I've said this before, but you know, growing up, I never had any black teachers. I ended up having two in high school. I had one as a math teacher and one as a creative writing teacher, but other than that, every teacher I've ever had was white. And some people may ask, why does that matter? But when you're talking about cultural relatability as far as teachers and students, sometimes black students have a really hard time in some classrooms depending on who the teacher is and based on how the teacher sees the world. But Mr. Burke was a really cool teacher. Like, he was kind of like a hippie, so he had like the long hair that he'd still keep in a ponytail. Like, he went to Woodstock in '69. He just lived his best life. He was Scottish, so he used to wear the kilt on occasion and everything like that. And he would come to the class and play the guitar and everything like that. He just did all of these different activities with us, and he was a really, really cool teacher. So I really liked this teacher. And so I was pissed at it. I was like, dang, I gotta leave this. And on top of that, you know, when you're little, relationships are so serious with the little kids that you're dating and everything like that. So there was this girl, Ebony. I hope she's not listening to this at all. But this girl, Ebony, me and her were boyfriend and girlfriend from second grade onward, and we used to think that we were going to get married. And Ebony was the first girl that ever gave me her phone number, and vice versa. And the funny part was Ebony acted a lot older than she really was. I think it's because she had older siblings. And you know, little old me, I was just so sheltered and innocent all the time. And so I remember one time Ebony called the house, and I was knocked out already. It was probably 9 o'clock or something. And of course, 9 o'clock to an 8-year-old is 2 a.m. if you had a bedtime that your parents made you actually abide by. And so I was already in bed. Ebony had called the house. My mom answered the phone. You know, Ebony's, you know, is Michael there? And the other thing, Ebony sounded a bit older as well. My mom's like, who is this? And Ebony, his wife? My mom's like, huh? What? And then my mom realized, wait a minute, this is that little girl that talks to my son. And so my mother the next day went in on me like, listen, you need to tell that little girl she does not call my house after 5 p.m. So I had to go talk to Ebony and be like, listen, my mom said you can't call the house after 5. And when you do call, she has to sit on the phone and listen to what we're talking about, because she said no child should be calling somebody else's house after 9 o'clock. And so that was childhood. I think what caught my mom off guard was the fact that my father and I have the same name. And like I said, Ebony sounded older than she really was. So it could have been possible that my mother may have thought this was another woman calling for my father. And so that really just set her off. I don't know. We'll never know. But, I was just kind of like, I don't want to move. Why do we have to move? I don't want to go to no Italy. And like, I was really happy and everything was great. And so I remember my mom was trying to show me some pictures of Italy, and so she shows me the picture of the city we're going to be living in, which is called Vicenza, or Vicenza, however you want to pronounce it. And I see the picture. If you've ever seen a picture of Vicenza downtown, you see a lot of like stone buildings. You see this big little basilica with a green roof and a clock tower. And to me, I was like, this place looks so boring, and this looks like Bosnia. And the only reason I knew what Bosnia was because I always saw Bosnia on the news, because I think we were over there blowing them up or something. But I was like, I don't want to go there. And the buildings looked old, and I didn't see skyscrapers, and I didn't see, I thought Seattle at the time was one of the coolest cities in the world with the Space Needle and all of that stuff. And I didn't see anything like that. And I'm like, what kind of torturous place is this? I don't want to go there. And so I was livid. And I remember asking, like, well, why can't I just stay with Grandma when you guys go to Italy? I don't want to stay there for 3 years. And the reason I was saying that was because there was a time period where my parents, when they were both in the military, got stationed at Camp Casey, Korea. And so I lived in Savannah for a full year with my grandma and my aunts and everything like that. And so I was like, well, why can't we just do that again? And my mom was like, what? Boy, you ain't staying at nobody's house for no 3 years. You come on with us. You need to try something new. The problem is you ain't never been nowhere, so you're scared of everything. So we're going to fix that because we're all going. And I'm like, dang, man, this is some bullshit. Like, that's what I wanted to say. And so my father decided that he also wanted me to see a lot of the family I had never met or maybe didn't remember, because also with us going to Italy for 3 years, there was a really, really strong possibility that we weren't going to be flying back to America for Christmas or summer or anything like that, because tickets to Europe are not cheap, especially when you got 4 family members. And so my father decided that he and I were going to take this long road trip all across the country and just visit a bunch of family before we go to Italy. And what would happen was, my father and I would, start in Washington and work our way down to California, then go across the little bottom states like New Mexico and Texas and everything like that. My mother would fly straight to Oklahoma and visit one of her best friends that stayed there. And so once we got to Oklahoma, we'd pick up my mother, and at the same time, my brother would be in Savannah. And the thing about my brother is not actually my brother. He's actually my cousin. I had another cousin that had him very, very young, and then my parents adopted my brother. And so my brother at the time was only about 1.5 going on 2. And my parents really wanted to make sure he still had a bond with his real mother and that side of the family, because one of the things my parents did was they were always transparent with my brother about who his real parents were. There was never any secrets like, okay, it wasn't a situation where my brother found out in his 20s, okay, this is really your mom. He always knew. And so he always knew that, so-and-so was his mother, and he also knew that my parents were also mom and dad. So he grew up with 3 parents. That's how he kind of saw everything. And so they wanted to make sure that he could get that bonding time in. And so this was going to be like a 2-month time period. Like I remember me and my father went on the road right before Thanksgiving, maybe 2 weeks before Thanksgiving or a week before Thanksgiving, and we weren't going to be flying to Italy until almost January. And so my mother would be in Oklahoma for about 2 weeks. My brother was in Savannah for about a good month and a half, and then everybody would meet up. So, the road trip starts. And the one thing is this. I always loved the road trip with my dad. That's why I was kind of excited that it was just going to be me and him. Because nothing against my mother, but she'd be all mean and want to change the music and not listen to anything fun. And just nothing but gospel and James Cleveland the whole way there. Ain't nobody trying to hear that the whole time. And so me and my father, though, when we would get in the car and just ride to all these places, it would just be the most fun. And maybe that's why I'm really into music now, just remembering sitting and at the time we had a Jeep Cherokee. They're sitting in a Jeep and just the music kind of blasting and vibrating through the seats, and you riding with the windows down, and those are some really, really good times. And so my father and I, we head out. I remember I told all my friends goodbye at school. I remember I cried. I didn't want to leave school because I was having fun. I knew I was never going to see those kids again. Because the other thing is, when you get stationed somewhere in the military, you don't know where you're going after that assignment is over. Sometimes you get to go back to where you initially started out, but sometimes you kind of move here, there, and everywhere else. And so, I remember it was the last day of school, and my teacher, Mr. Burke, and he had my second grade teacher was also there, this lady named Miss Salmon. That's the only reason why I know how to pronounce the word salmon that has the L in it. You don't pronounce the L, and she used to make sure we knew that. But, I remember they had threw me like a going away party, and everybody was trying to tell me, you should be excited, you're going to get to go and live all the way on the other side of the world, and this is an experience that most kids will never get to experience. And so they were trying to get me a little bit more hype about it, because I had no desire to leave. And so anyway, my father and I hit the road, and we started driving from Washington, and we drove down through the entire state of Oregon. And mind you, while we would be driving to these different places, we'd be stopping at restaurants and sightseeing and everything like that, and just listening to all the different music. And true story, I think the reason I became a TLC fan as a child was because during an earlier road trip some years before, somebody broke into our truck while we were at the hotel sleeping. And they cleared that truck out. They took all my dad's CDs, they took the little change, they took the gum, they took everything. The only thing they did not take was the Ooh on the TLC Tip album, because it was in the CD changer, because they couldn't figure out how to rip the CD changer out the truck. And so I remember one road trip on the way back, that was the only thing we could listen to, because the radio, once you get in certain areas, there's no radio signal at all once you hit some of those mountains. And so it was TLC for a good 5 or 6 hours straight, and I think that's how I got hooked. But anyway, just riding with good music and everything. And so we drive through Oregon, we get through California, we're going through the vineyards and everything like that, and you're seeing the Napa Valley and Mount Shasta and Crystal Lake and all these cool things. And then we stop in the Bay Area, and that's because most of his siblings live there. Like my Aunt Retta lives there, my Uncle Earl lived there, my Aunt Barbara lived there. I had a bunch of cousins that lived there. My father was born in Los Angeles, but then he later moved to Oakland, and then they later moved to Pittsburgh, California. And so we go there and we spend some time with all of my cousins on my dad's side. Now, as much as I love my father's side of the family now, growing up I did not like always going there sometimes, because one, I was closer to my mom's side because that's who I kind of spent most of my time with. And the other thing was, when I got with my cousins on my dad's side, I would have to fight all the time. Like, I don't know if it was I'm the sheltered kid from Washington State, and so let's pick on him. But man, I would have to literally fight for my life every day. I used to be so pissed. And I had 3 cousins, Baldy, DeMero, and Marshawn, and all 3 of them were brothers. And me and Marshawn were the 2 that used to fight all the time about everything. It's funny because we look back, we're cool now, but when we were little, we could be playing Uno and let me put a draw 2 down and he didn't like it. All of a sudden now it's going to be a fight. Now mind you, this is like North Richmond, California and everything like that. So it's a very different environment from little nice farm town Spanaway where, there's horses next to your school. Okay, this is Richmond, California, Oakland, California, Concord, Vallejo. I have family just scattered all over that region. But man, my Sean and I would just go at it all the time. And me and my Sean were the closest in age. Like he was the youngest, and then Baldy was in the middle, and then DeMero was much older. But me and my Sean would just go at it all the time. And the thing was, I wasn't really a fighter. I didn't really have a reason to fight too much as a kid. Like one, my younger brother was too young to fight because he was still a toddler, barely walking and talking. And at school, you didn't get in too many fights. I got maybe 1 or 2 fights in school back in the day. And so, we would go at it all the time. It would be like one of us would just trigger the other all the time. It wasn't always just them on me. Sometimes I'd be talking trash and start something. But and don't let me get a good hit in. Don't let me get a good pop in, because then all hell was about to break loose. And the funniest thing was this. Back in Spanaway, at that age, you got in a fight, you hit somebody. Once they started crying, the fight was over because you didn't want to get in trouble. Not with these cousins. You start crying, and so it would keep going. But the worst part would be, like, if you got a good hit in with one of them, especially if I got a good hit on my Sean, then Baldy would jump in because it's like, wait a minute, now, you're not going to be hitting on my brother. I'm like, dang. So those used to be some rough times, but when we were not fighting, everything was good. Have some really great times. It was always fun playing with them. Like they were a lot of fun to play with because I never had, any brothers, so I always enjoyed hanging with them. The only other cousin that was close to being like a brother would have been Brandon, but Brandon was on my mother's side in Georgia. And so yeah, those were some times. It's funny looking back on it now, but man, back when we were little, I used to have to scrap for my life all the time. But then the funniest part, if all of us went out and we were walking in the neighborhood, they would have my back the whole time. They would not let any other kid in the neighborhood mess with their cousin. So I'm like, okay, so pretty much as long as I stay outside, we good. But when we get in the house, it ain't safe. So let's just stay outside all day. But yeah, when we weren't fighting, everything was good. So after we spent some days in the Bay Area and we visited all these different relatives and everything like that, then we drove down to LA. And LA is where my father's side resides. So that was the side we didn't really meet until the year before, actually. My father had found his father in 1995. And so, my father had additional siblings and brothers and sisters, and I had a bunch of new cousins and stuff I didn't really know. And so we had met them the year before, and so my father wanted to go there for Thanksgiving. And so, it's cool because I had never had a grandpa before. So, this was the second time I'd be seeing my grandpa. And it's funny now because now, I've been building that relationship with that side. It's taken years, but, we're getting there. And so, we spent some time in LA, and that was fun. And my grandpa and my step-grandma had this really huge Thanksgiving party. And, it was crazy because it was like a whole block party. Now, mind you, at the time, they had to be in their 60s or close to it. And I mean, they had the music cranking and the grill outside. And I'm like, is this Thanksgiving or is this a barbecue? And then he took me to Disneyland, which for me, that was just straight heaven, because that was one of the places I had always wanted to go. Because I remember the commercial would come on to be our guest, be our guest. I forgot the words, but I used to be hyped when that commercial came on. So I was excited. And it was funny, like growing up in Washington State, there's this building called the Tacoma Dome, which is like an arena. And when I was little, I used to think that arena was Disneyland, because my father had took me there when I was 3 or 4, and they had like a Disney on Ice thing, so I used to always say that was Disneyland. And so now we're going to the real thing. Oh, I was hyped. You couldn't tell me anything. I had so much fun. Aside from the fact that he forced me to get on Space Mountain, because I thought it was a store. It kind of looked like one of the houses off the Jetsons. And when I got in, and mind you, we had to wait in line for 2 hours. So after we waited for them 2 hours, and I realized right before it was time to get on, okay, this isn't a store, this is a roller coaster, and you're gonna have to get on it. And I was scared of heights. I mean, my dad was like, listen, we waited in this line for 2 hours. I don't care about them tears. You better get on this ride. And so I had to get on the ride. I remember I just held onto the little rail and just looked straight down the whole time with my eyes closed. I was like, it was the worst thing ever. It's so funny looking back now, but yo, I was shook. I was traumatized. I was like, I'm ready to go home now, Dad. We can go. So the road trip went on, and we went through New Mexico and Arizona. We had stopped at the Grand Canyon. He had drove me past the Vegas Strip so I could see what it looked like. We weren't going to be stopping anywhere, but we were just going to get a look. And we got into Oklahoma, and that's when we met my mom. And it was cool because we were staying at one of her best friend's house. And at the time, they had a son, Darren, who was close in age with me, and he and I were really good friends growing up because they used to live in Washington as well. I used to spend the night at their house all the time before they moved to Oklahoma. And me and Darren used to think we were going to be scientists, so we used to go and take like lotion and glue and milk and food coloring, just take everything and try to make different little chemicals and stuff. And we used to keep trying to make silly putty or try to make gack, which is kind of like, the kids play with that slime stuff now, but I remember gack was like this. You'd see it on the commercials on Nickelodeon. It was kind of like a silly putty. We used to try to figure out how to make it, and we could never make it right. And I remember somehow I knocked the cup over, and it had all that stuff in their carpet. Oh, the way we got cussed out. And if you've ever been cussed out by a Jamaican lady, that's an experience you don't want to have. Because listen, Darren's mom was Jamaican. Like I don't even know what she was saying, but I felt every word. Like I was like, I just knew never to do what I did again. And so, we moved on from Oklahoma. We stopped in Texas and went through Louisiana. And then after Louisiana, because at this point it's me, my mother, and my father in the car. And so, of course, the playlist in the car has changed. All the fun songs are now switching back to gospel, and we got to listen to LaShawn Pace and Georgia Mass Choir and James Cleveland. And I did like Hezekiah Walker. At least his stuff was upbeat. All of the Edwin Hawkins. I'm like, you're killing me. Mind you, I do like the songs, but when you're little in the car, you can have some fun. Like me and my dad, once mom got in the car, the whole mood just changed. I'm like, dang. But anyway, the one thing I was looking forward to was getting to Savannah, Georgia, because I knew Brandon would be there and I would get to play, and it was just going to be a great time. Grandma and all the aunts and uncles, it was going to be a good time. But before we got to Savannah, Georgia, we had to stop in Utica, Mississippi. Now here's the thing. Utica, Mississippi is one of the first towns you hit coming out of Louisiana. It has a population of about 800 people, and the city, or actually the town, is only 3 square miles, all right? There is literally nothing to do in this town. Like, I swear to God, they shot The Color Purple in this town. There's literally nothing there. It was a grocery store. Actually, the grocery store wasn't in Utica. It was somewhere outside of Utica, but there was a grocery store called Sunflower or Mayflower. There was a church. Actually, there was like 3 churches. One little small schoolhouse. Yes, a schoolhouse. Like Little House on the Prairie, the Waltons, schoolhouse. And a few properties, and that was pretty much it. I was like, what is this place? Like, and I remember my mom used to watch the Waltons when they still had the Family Channel, and I was like, is this where they shoot the Waltons, Mom? And my mom would pop me in the mouth because I'm being all loud while we knocking on the lady's door that we were about to visit. And so, like, there was nothing there. And the funniest thing was, my dad was so excited to be here because he had grew up in this town. As a child, my father would spend his summers in Utica, Mississippi, in the same way that I used to spend my summers in Savannah, Georgia. So my father was excited. It was like he was reliving his own childhood. And so I remember we got there, my dad was excited to just tell me about how it used to be living there, because this is how rural the town was. my great aunt's house, the house that we were actually going to be staying at while we were in Utica, had just got plumbing maybe 10 years earlier. Like the outhouse was still on the property. There was a whole outhouse, and I remember I thought it was like a shed or something, so of course I went to go open it, and that smell came. Okay, I won't be playing here. All right. And literally the area, like, it was old sharecropping land. There were plantations. You could see cotton fields. I was like, I don't know what to make of this. This is a lot, but to be honest, I had so much fun playing out there. I mean, they had chickens. I was running and chasing chickens, and I think she had a goat and like one sheep and everything like that. I had a ball until I realized that the chicken we were eating that day was one of the chickens I had just been playing with like 3 hours earlier. I was like, oh, wait a minute. That chicken was good, but I felt so bad. I was like, I was just playing with this chicken. And then I remember they didn't have cable or anything. Like the lady, she had TV, and that's back in the day where you had the rabbit ears, the little antenna, and you put like some foil or a ring on the antenna to get a better signal. And so the only thing we could watch during the day was Ricky Lake, Jenny Jones, the daytime shows and whatever came on at night. But I will say the food was really, really good. That's the one thing. People who live in those really small southern towns can just cook. God, they can cook so well. Now, my mother was ready to go. This was too much for her. Like, she was like, we need to wrap this up. We need to hurry up. But we stayed in Utica for 3 days, and all three of us had to share the same bed, which was... I thought it was cool. My parents were probably irritated because, listen, they hadn't seen each other in a good month and a half or a few weeks or however long it was. So, they want to get their mom and daddy time in, and I'm in the way laying right in between them, So, there's that. Now, in between California and Georgia, we stopped in a bunch of places, but I just want to highlight a few. So then, we drive through Mississippi after we visited some additional family, because we didn't only stop in Utica. We stopped in Jackson, we stopped in some places in Alabama, we stopped in a few places in Georgia, and then finally, we got to Savannah. And of course, I was excited. And we were going to spend pretty much the majority of our time in Savannah before we drove up through Philly and flew to Italy from there. And so, we spent Christmas in Savannah. Of course, my brother is back now, and he's gotten a little bit bigger, and so it's just a good time. It was a really good little bit of time that we spent in Savannah. Of course, me and Brandon just had a ball, just having us a good time the whole time. Now, one of the funny moments I remember is my Aunt Sylvia. Now, my Aunt Sylvia is my cousin Brandon's mother, and Sylvia is the family member that always has jokes. That's the one you're going to get a good laugh from. And so, I was trying to explain to her about us moving to Italy, and she already knew, but she is the one that likes to play jokes. And so I remember I was watching Busy World of Richard Scarry on TV. I don't know if you remember that cartoon, but they had an episode where they were in Venice, Italy. And so all I saw was this little town with no streets, and I just saw boats and more boats. And I was like, what is this? And I thought Venice and Vicenza were the same thing. I couldn't tell the difference. And so I was freaking out like, oh my God. And I was like, Sylvia, is this where I'm going to be living? And so she's like, yeah, you didn't know? As a matter of fact, they don't have any streets. And when you land, you're going to have to ride mules in the mountains just to get to where you're going to be living. And then after you get off the mules, you're going to have to get on a horse and carriage, and it's going to take you to the village where you live. And like, she was so serious, and I was like, oh, what kind of place is this? I was shook. And at this point, Utica, Mississippi was looking a lot better than Italy at the time. For me, I thought Italy was going to be this little backwards place where now all of a sudden there's no cars, there's no streets, everybody lives on a boat, you got to take a mule and a horse to get anywhere. And then on top of that, I was scared of flying, because that summer was the summer TWA Flight 800 exploded. And so Sylvia's continued to troll, and I was like, I'm kind of scared because I don't want to fly over the water, because I had never flown over water before. And I was like, well, what if we crash? We're just going to be in the water. And Sylvia's like, oh, you'll be fine as long as they don't put too much fuel in the plane and it doesn't blow up, you'll be fine. And that was the last thing I wanted to hear. And I'm like, well, how do you know, or how do they know if they put too much fuel in the plane? She's like, I don't know, they just kind of take a guess. Like, she used to just troll me. So I was shook about going to Italy, but I had so much fun in Savannah that time. And then came the day when it was time to leave Savannah. And I cried, because I knew I wasn't going to be seeing any of them for at least 3 years. And one of the things that all of us used to do, I don't know if it's a southern thing that families do, but I remember anytime we went to Savannah and it was time to go, like all the cousins, all us kids, we would cry. We never wanted to leave each other. And I was in there boo-hooing. Brandon was crying because Brandon was going to be driving back to Atlanta, and then, because that's where him and his mom lived. And, I was so, Marcus was the only one who wasn't crying. Marcus was like, all right, where are we going? Because, of course, he doesn't really understand what's going on. He's barely, he's not even 2 yet. And I boo-hooed. I did not want to leave my grandma, because grandma's house, like I said before in the other podcast, going to Savannah was my Disney World. Like, I loved going there. And really, I didn't want to go to Italy. In my head, I thought they were still going to consider letting me just live in Italy for 3 years, or Savannah for 3 years while they go to Italy. And so, we left that morning. it had to be 5 or 6 in the morning. So we went ahead. We drove through the Carolinas. We stopped in the Carolinas to visit one of my mom's friends, and it's funny, they're still really good friends. When my father died, they came and flew in for the funeral and stayed at our house and everything, which was really nice. And so, we drove through the Carolinas, we drove through Virginia, we stopped and drove through DC, and I'm like, who would have known I'd be living there 20 years later? And then we went through Delaware. I mean, and mind you, we stopped, and while we were there, we stopped at all these different places and ate at different restaurants and did more sightseeing. And mind you, it's a different dynamic because now it's me, my brother, my mother, and father all in the car. So the whole time period of me and my father just riding till the wheels fall off, that was over with now because mom is in the car, Marcus is in the car. He's going to cry every few hours because he's bored. He wants to get up and walk and everything like that. And so things had changed. But so we finally get to the whole Philadelphia, Jersey area. I can't remember exactly which airport we flew out of. I just remember either our hotel was in Philly and we'd get on a bridge and fly out of Jersey or vice versa. I honestly can't remember, but y'all can correct me for those who follow me on YouTube and just say what airport that was. But so we ended up flying out of either Jersey or Philly. And I even remember the flight because I was scared. Like I said, I was terrified of flying because I saw TWA Flight 800 and that was the plane that blew up over the Atlantic Ocean, and I was so scared. And then I kept thinking about my aunt saying, if they put too much fuel in the plane, it'll blow up too. So I'm like, well, what if they put too much fuel in the plane? And so the flight we were on was one of these kind of like military flights, and how they had it set up was the people who had children were all kind of put in the back of the plane. And so for me, the back of the plane was a free-for-all. I had a good time. It was all kind of kids, noise for days. I know it drove my parents crazy. And then on top of that, they put Toy Story on, which was like a really big movie at the time. And so we watched Toy Story on the plane. That was the only thing that kept me sane. The flight was about 8 hours, and I remember we flew from Jersey to, I think we stopped at the Azores. It was either the Azores or Portugal. And so we stopped there, and then we had a layover for like 10 hours. It was torture. I went to sleep like 3 times and woke up when we were still at the airport. I'm like, well, what the heck? Because, when you're a kid, time seems to go by really, really fast when you're asleep. So for some reason, I thought that, if I just take a nap and wake up, we'll be in Italy already or something. Like somehow my parents would have carried me to the plane and put me in my seat, and the plane would have taken off and we would have landed in Italy, and now we're there. But no, we were still in the Azores. So, we go ahead, we get on the next flight. We land at Aviano Airfield, which is about I think it's in Lipa, Italy. I don't even know if that base is still there anymore, but it's about an hour and a half from where we were going to be staying. So, we land at the Air Force Base, and then we get in this van, and we ride for like an hour and some change, and we get to Vicenza, Italy. Now, the military base we were going to be staying at was Caserta, Italy, and it was a very interesting dynamic. So let me shift the mood here because I needed to give all of that earlier detail just so you could see the context of what was going on and where I was as far as my headspace. And so now we're in Italy, and we're at this base called Caserta, Italy. Now, Caserta, Italy is a small military base, like really, really small. It was pretty much like 5 streets, to be honest. I remember exactly what it looks like when you would go in. You would come in through the main gate, because the base had, I think, 2 gates. There was a gate in the back of the base and a gate in the front. And you come in, as soon as you come in through the gate, to the right side would be the church. To the left side were some military barracks. You drive a little bit further. On the right side, there were some more military official buildings. On the left side, some more barracks. To the left, if you went further down one of those side streets, you had like the news station, this big giant open field, and some other military buildings. And continuing down that main street, you go further down. Once you look to the right, there was like a shopping area, and in that area was the PX, which is pretty much like a mini mall for people that are in the military. The bank, the commissary, which was the grocery store. There was a Burger King, a few other little small stores, and the movie theater was to the right. To the left were some more military barracks and some more like military buildings, and then you kept going further down. To the right was the school, and so the school was elementary, middle school, and high school all in the same building. To the left of that was a daycare. You kept going a little bit further down, there was a hotel, and there was what would eventually become a teen center, and that was it for that side. And then if you went down one more back street, it would take you by this place called the Towers, which I'll talk about in a second, and then the hospital was to the left of that, and on the right side was a field, and there was a few little areas for like military training, and that was it. That was the whole base. And so I'm like, okay, this is where we're gonna be for the next 3 years, huh? And so Italy was kind of like being in America when you were on the base. As long as you were on the military base, everybody spoke English, you saw things that you were familiar with, but when you stepped outside of the base, now you're in Italy, you're in Vicenza, Italy. And so It was a major adjustment because there were so many things that were really, really different. First of all, there was going to be no such thing as cable, and at the time there was one channel to watch. It was American Forces Network, and what they would do is, it was called AFN. I think I've talked about it before, but long story short, they try to take the best of what was on television in America and put it all on one channel. So you had that. As far as radio and music, there wasn't really any radio stations. You had this Italian station called Disco Palladio, and they would play, the biggest hits that were playing in America. But a lot of the moderate R&B hits and stuff you would never hear. And so you heard a lot of the really big pop songs. The Spice Girls were everywhere. Jesus. But that was pretty much the radio. There was an American radio station, but the genre changed every hour. So I think the R&B hip hop hour, I feel like it was either at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or it was in the evening, something like that. I can't remember. But I know they put R&B and hip hop in the same hour, and that's all you got. And so when we got there, we didn't have housing right off the bat, so we had to stay at the hotel. The hotel was fine, stay at the hotel, pretty cool, I guess. And my parents were trying to get me registered for school. And then after the hotel, after about 4 days, they moved us to a place called the Towers on base. And the Towers were pretty much temporary housing for people who just moved to the military base but still need a housing assignment. And we lived in the Towers for about a month. And then finally, we got our housing assignment in this neighborhood called Villaggio. Now, Villaggio was not on the military base, but it was a designated space outside of the military base for military families. And so it was, you could walk to it from the main base, and it was probably a good 10-minute walk, or if you drove, it was like 3 minutes. But it was a gated military installation kind of base that probably housed, I want to say a few hundred people. It was a pretty cool neighborhood to grow up in. In the neighborhood, there were actually a few things to do. Pretty much, there were 6 or 7 different parks in the neighborhood that you could go to as far as playgrounds. And so there were 6 or 7 playgrounds. There was a youth center. It was actually through youth services. So like companies like Boys and Girls Club have military branches called youth services. So that's what we had in Villaggio. It wasn't like a big giant Boys and Girls Club with pools and stuff. It was literally one big community space, and they renovated it in my later years in Italy, and then they ended up getting like a mini gym and stuff. And then there were 2 community pools that surrounded the Boys and Girls Club that we lived by, and all you had to do was just have $1 to get in. And I think if you were 10 or up, you could go by yourself. And then there was a small little shopette in the neighborhood, which was kind of like a 7-Eleven or a corner store. And there was this Italian lady, Mrs. Kakulis, that would be there. And I remember her because my mom used to send me to that shop all the time to go get eggs or go get milk or go get something. And then behind that was this place called Self-Help, and it was kind of like a mini tiny Home Depot, like really, really small corner store. But in that store would be stuff for gardening or home care or decor, hammers, nails, grass seeds, stuff like that. And that was pretty much and then it was in the front of the neighborhood, there was a big giant field for like soccer and stuff like that. And so that was pretty much the neighborhood. So, over time, the neighborhood actually ended up being a really fun place to grow up. Now, let me talk about school. So, school. 3rd grade was not very enjoyable at this school. I had so much fun at my old elementary, Camas Prairie, in Washington State, in Spanaway. But Vicenza Elementary School was something else. Like I said before, all 3 elementary, junior high, high school were all in the same building. We all took the same bus. It was a very, very unique experience. And the thing I hated when I first got there, I got into so many fights the first 5 or 6 months I was there. I was fighting somebody every other day. And the problem was this. The kids there were very, very cliquish, kind of. And I don't really know why, because it seemed like somebody was always coming and going anyway. Like every time you'd make a friend, they'd be getting ready to move back to America, or you were getting ready to move, so you could never have a friend for more than a year. Because like one of my best friends I made at the time, this kid Dwayne, I had just got there, and me and him were so tight, but then he had to move like 5 months later. I'm like, dang, well that sucks. And so, that was one of the things. But there was this kid named Paul. Now, Paul was in 5th grade. I was in 3rd. And like I said, you had every age group going to the same school. And so I remember we'd be waiting at the bus stop. And the thing that sucked about the bus stop, or the bus in general, one, you had to have a bus pass to get on the bus. It was like this bus pass that the Dodge school district would give you. That way, for a safety issue, because, you're in a foreign country and everything like that. They want to make sure they don't got crazy people getting on the bus. And so you have this bus pass that you'd have to show to get on the bus. And the cool thing about the buses was that we were given tour buses. There was no yellow school buses to get on, so they were like everyday tour buses. But the bus that we had was old. Like, it was some bus from like 1982. I used to hate that bus. But some of the other people that had other bus stops had like cool double-decker buses and stuff. I'm like, why we can't get one of those buses? But anyway, Paul was such a bully. Paul was much bigger than me too. Paul was like this big giant white kid who you would have thought he was in like 7th or 8th grade, but he was only in 5th. I don't know what they were feeding him as a child. He was chopping lumber or something as a hobby when he was a kid. But Paul was such a freaking bully. And there was this kid, Nathan, who lived about a building over from me. And his mom and my mom were really good friends. Nathan was in 6th grade. They were one of the first families we met when we got there. And Nathan would let me come over and play Streets of Rage on Sega, because that was the game to have. Yeah, Streets of Rage 3 was the one to have. He had 2, but it was fine. It was all the same game. And so, Nathan was really cool. And so I remember I was at the bus stop trying to mind my business. I'm listening to my little cassette tape that I had made from the radio before I even got to Italy, so it had all the biggest hits of the summer that year. So it was Quad City DJs, The Train was on there. I think Keith Sweat Twisted was on there. I mean, I was jamming, having me a good time. And then I just felt my little headphones get yanked off my head. And these were those headphones. Remember those headphones that had the metal wire rod, and then it would just be the 2 cushion parts for your ears? It was one of those. So he like yanked that off my head, and then I got nervous and I dropped my Walkman. The batteries and fell all out and everything like that. And then he kicked the Walkman down the side. I'm like, what the heck? And so Nathan jumps in and is like, dude, like, what are you doing? So somehow Nathan and Paul get in a fight. And so in my head, I'm thinking, okay, Nathan is in 6th grade, and so that means he's going to win. Because, when you're little, you just think if somebody's in older grade, they're going to win, even if the person younger is bigger than them. So Nathan and Paul get to wrecking, and listen, it didn't end well for Nathan. Nathan pretty much got beat up by Paul. I was like, dang, shoot. And so I'm on the other side of the bus stop trying to act like I'm invisible, like hopefully he don't see me no more. And then here comes Paul coming in my direction, because Nathan, one of the high schoolers, had to walk him home to go get cleaned up because his nose was all busted up and everything. And that's what pissed me off. The middle schoolers and the high schoolers, they would egg that crap on. They thought it was cool that the elementary kids were fighting, so they would never break up anything. Like, literally, you had to fight if something was going on, because if you didn't fight, then they would call you all kind of weak and soft and some other words we're not going to use tonight. And so you'd end up feeling pressured to fight. And so Paul comes in my direction. I'm like, dang, man. And so me and Paul end up getting into this fight, and I done forgot, when you get in a fight as a kid, you need to take off your coat. You got to take off your backpack. It's going to slow you down and everything like that. And so at first, I'm getting slung around and tossed all over the little bus stop, and it doesn't help that Paul is taller than me. And then the middle schoolers and the high schoolers who are egging it on are like, take the jacket off, take the jacket off, take the jacket off, man, you gotta take the... And so I was like, oh, okay. So I took that jacket off and slid out of that backpack, and then I'm like, okay, what's up? And so me and Paul get to fighting, and the only thing that's literally saving me is that Paul had just fought Nathan earlier. So his energy is not quite there. I'm on an adrenaline high, because I'm pissed off. You made me break my Walkman. I know I'm not getting another one, because my daddy just bought me that for Christmas, and now you didn't, like, you messing up how I keep my peace. Like, no, don't mess with my freaking music. And so, I mean, we get to wrecking now. I didn't win the fight, but I didn't lose either. It was kind of one of those fights where, okay, clearly I think we should just stop because we're not making any progress here. But I felt like I was the ish that day, because Paul, like, he didn't really beat me up. I ain't have no marks or nothing. I had like a little scratch somewhere, but that was it. And Paul, of course, he's all red and you can see everything because, they bruise easy. So, of course, it looked like I won the fight. I knew I didn't win though, because literally Paul just got tired. That was the only thing that saved me. But that day, I was like, you couldn't tell me anything. But yeah, I got into so many fights for some reason. Even at school, I used to be arguing with all the kids, and I didn't understand because I wasn't bothering anybody. But those first few months, my God, Jesus. But it must have just been something in the water, because even one of the teachers at the school got in a fight with another teacher at field day. That was some months later. There was this teacher, Miss Flowers, the one black lady that worked at the school, and somehow she got in an argument with this other lady. I think it was this lady named Miss Can. I can't remember. They got in a whole fist fight at field day. I'm like, what kind of mess? It was a lot going on. I don't know if maybe because at this military base, you had people from all realms of the United States living in one space, and so you have different political views and different ways of doing things, and all of these people concentrated into one small space. And so sometimes I guess people they didn't really connect very well. They would connect by fist, but they didn't connect intellectually. I don't know, but it was a lot. And so my 3rd grade teacher at Vicenza Elementary School was this man named Mr. Robert Shaw. And when I tell you, Mr. Robert Shaw probably had to be the worst teacher I've ever had. And I'm going to put his name out there because I do not appreciate that man with any... Like, there was nothing I learned from that man other than that some people are just terrible. Like, he was one mean, old, angry... He had to be like 70. This old, short man who just had the worst personality. He had no element of empathy, no anything. And so I had a really hard time in his class. Plus, I was a little behind. I think that road trip where I was out of school for almost 2 months really played a role in it. I mean, my dad tried to set it up where, we're going to go around Thanksgiving and then really you only got 2 weeks of school and then it's Christmas break and but I don't know. But I had a very hard time in his class. And what I used to hate that we would do, you would do the peer editing. Where you have like your classwork or your homework and then you pass it to your neighbor and then, they would grade it and then you'd get your paper back and then you'd read your grade out loud to the class. And we didn't do letter grades in 3rd grade. We did a system called S minus, and U. So S meant like, okay, satisfactory, you did okay. S minus was like, you're tripping, and then a U was underperforming. There was no such thing as an A, and an S was not an equivalent to an A, and S just meant that you met the requirement. So it was a really, really weird experience. And what I used to hate is I was not good at math. And so whenever we had arithmetic, we had these little arithmetic books, and then you do the assignment in the book, and then, your friend would grade it, and then they give it back to you. And I kept getting U's, like, all the time. And so, he would go down a list and make everybody say their grade, and, LaPortia, and she'd be like, S, and so, S minus, so, S, Michael, U. And then, like, every other assignment, Michael, U, Michael, U, Michael. S minus, Michael, U. And then one day he just flipped out on me in front of the whole class, like, Michael, this is the 4th U you've gotten today. Are you even trying? My goodness, are you even in the right grade? I mean, Mr. Robert Shaw made me feel so dumb. And then he just was already mean. And I think the worst experience I had in that class, which I really don't even want to tell because I still get pissed off thinking about it, is we still had standardized testing over there as well. I think the test was called the Terra Nova test. I can't remember. But at the time, I already wasn't doing really well in school. I was starting to get in trouble because, I kept getting all these letters home about, okay, your son's underperforming on this, your son's not doing this well. So I was already starting to get in a lot of trouble. And so we had these standardized tests. And with the test, you weren't allowed to leave the classroom until, the time period had ended. No ifs, ands, or buts. There will be no exceptions. If there's any kind of commotion that you cause where you have to leave the room, you go into the principal's office, you get a phone call home. And for me, a phone call home in a black household with parents who don't play, you don't want that smoke. And so I remember I had finished my portion of the test and we still had to sit there for another hour and I had to go to the bathroom so bad. I had to go so bad. And Mr. Robert Shaw would not let me go. And I was like, please, Mr. I cannot hold it. He refused to let me go. And he was like, I dare you to walk out of that door. And so I was thinking of the idea of me getting sent to the principal and me getting fussed at by my parents getting in trouble. And so I ended up wetting myself in the class and I was so embarrassed. And nobody knew because I just sat still. Like I had these like light jeans on, so you really couldn't tell. But I wet myself in the chair and I had to just sit there. And I remember I was crying. And so I sat there. I didn't go to recess. I just sat there. And then he forced me to go to recess because I didn't want to go to lunch either. And nobody knew that I had did it. And so I remember I went outside and in that recess, I just kind of stayed away from everybody and stayed on the side and tried to air dry. Like it was kind of traumatizing, to be honest. Like it was the worst experience. And then he was one of those teachers that didn't understand that it's not good to shame children in front of other children. I've learned that just from working with kids myself. Like you never want to make a child feel that an entire room is against them. And I remember we were doing this geography lesson and one of the questions was, for some reason he called on me and he was asking me, okay, where is the city of Pittsburgh? And so yes, there's a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but the only Pittsburgh I knew was the Pittsburgh in California that my family was in. And so I remember, and another thing, I told you my dad grew up in Pittsburgh. As a matter of fact, he went to the same Pittsburgh high school that's in the movie Coach Carter. And so, they'd ask me, where's Pittsburgh? And so I said California. And so the whole class starts laughing and I'm looking like, what? It isn't California. And they're laughing some more. I'm like, there's a Pittsburgh in California. And he's like, first of all, you're wrong. There's a Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. You didn't read the lesson. And I'm like, but there's a Pittsburgh in California. Well, I've never heard of it and you're wrong. And I already said, and that's the end of the conversation. And so we get into this mini argument. Next thing you know, I got to write sentences on the board during recess. And so I'm sitting here writing, I will not disrupt the class and be disrespectful to the teacher. And the thing that I hated was, this wasn't the nice little whiteboards. This was this blackboard with that old dusty chalk. And I hated the sound of chalk because it just irritated my teeth. And man, like that was the worst class. I hated that class so much. 3rd grade was straight trash. And he was such a contrast from my teacher, Mr. Burke at Campus Prairie. Because Mr. Burke, like I said, he was like this hippie. He was like just super, super fun. And, he incorporated music and colors and everything into how he taught. Mr. Robert Shaw had to be like 70-something. He was very, very old school, very traditional. There were no colors in the classroom. I had an assigned seat by this kid, Terrell, who used to eat crayons. Because I guess we were on the stupid section of the class, so he put us in the corner. And like it was such a dull, I hated that class. And it didn't help that I was behind. And so what ended up happening is I became extremely timid and extremely shy in the classroom. And so I was like that for like the next 2 years. Like I became extremely shy, and I was always afraid to answer because I just knew I'd get something wrong. And then if I got something wrong, I just knew I'd be ridiculed in front of the whole class. Which is one of the reasons why now with working with kids, I'm very cautious of how I address children when they've done wrong, especially if there's an audience, only because I remember what that crap felt like. And then it didn't help, my reading was bad too. And like I used to tell my parents like how terrible the teacher was, but my parents were old school, and for them it was the teacher's always right. You just need to quit acting crazy, da 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 da. And I never told them about that wetting myself in class story, because I know it would have been a different outcome if they would have heard that their child wet himself in the classroom because you didn't let the student go to the bathroom. It would have been the end of the world for that teacher. But at the time, being 8 years old, it was like I just saw things differently. And so I remember I was doing really bad with reading as well. And it didn't help that Mr. Robertshaw gave me extra work to take home, because according to him, I was in danger of having to repeat 3rd grade. And so I remember I would get these extra spelling words that I had to do on top of the spelling words that I already had. And that used to be torture, because my mama did not play about them spelling words. Man, I remember back in the day, she would be right on the couch. I would have to sit right by her, and this would be after I already told her I studied, and she was going to review it and make sure I had the words down. And so the 2 words I could never spell properly were kitchen and dictionary. Any kind of TCH combination never went well. And I remember my mom would pop me every time I would mess up the letter. And so she'd be like, dictionary, because that was the main one I could not get right, was dictionary. She'd be like, dictionary. I'm like, D-I-T, dictionary. D-I-T-C-D-I-D. Like, you just be shocked, man. By the time you got to it, you'd be in tears trying to get to the word. And you, dictionary. It was so bad. Like, listen, because growing up, parents don't realize how abusive they were sometimes. I'm like, dang, mama, you used to be on one, man. I hate that. But listen, I can spell dictionary now. I can spell it very well. Man, but I used to hate that. And then we had to go to Host Nation, which was this class where you learned Italian. And I've talked about Signora Salviati before in my episode about running away from home. But yes, I had to go to her class where you learn Italian, and I didn't even like that class because, mind you, in my head, I didn't want to be in Italy. I wanted nothing to do with this country. I wasn't having a really great time. Who cares about learning Italian? And so I was checked out during that whole class, and you had to take Signora Salviati's class every grade in elementary. And man, I used to hate going to that class. It was just torture. And then she spoke Italian for the majority of the class. And so you just be looking at her like she's crazy, like, huh? What? Okay. And then she was a much older woman too. Like, something about that school, there were so many teachers who were so much older. You had a lot of Americans who would move there in their younger years and stayed and never left, and they weren't even associated with the military. They retired there, or so you had a lot of older teachers at this elementary school. Signora Salviati's class, I couldn't stand going to that class. It was torture. And then there was this teacher, Miss Juniper. Now, she claimed that she was an astronaut. I went to Google her the other day just to make sure to see if she had a history. I couldn't find nothing on her, but apparently she was an astronaut at some point, her and her husband, because both of them taught at the school. But Miss Juniper was the water fountain regulator. She used to do this thing where you only got 3 seconds to get water, like when you'd be coming in from recess. And of course, in the spring and towards the summer, Italy would get hot. But you'd be running outside all day. And the other thing was, the school had no grassy area. Our whole playground was straight tarmac. So, there would be some slides and, turf, but it was all tarmac and concrete. So you'd be out there hot, scorching, and then when recess would end, of course, everybody wants to go to the water fountain, and she would stand over the water fountain and do 1, 2, 3, boom, and then the next kid would have to go 1, 2, 3, and you'd be so pissed because she didn't start the one once the water came out. As soon as you got to the water fountain, she 1, 2, 3, so you'd have to get to the water fountain, push the button real fast, and try to get as much as you could. And there was no extra second and a half or anything. Literally, once she got to 3, she was pushing you out of the way and you needed to go to class. You'd be leaving that thing so thirsty, still out of breath, sweating. Oh, like Miss Juniper, like that was the teacher everybody couldn't stand. You knew if you saw her in the hallway, you might as well just not even go to the water fountain, because you gonna leave worse off than you started. And then there was church. Oh my God. So the church on the base, there was only one building that could hold church services. So what they ended up doing was you had multiple churches sharing the same space. And so they had a really, really, really tight schedule so that they could get as many of the denominations in the church building as possible. So like, the Catholic service might be like 8 o'clock and the Protestant service would be at 9 and whatever, all these different services. The I guess you could say the black service, because they pretty much put, the Kojic and Baptist and Pentecostal and AME and all of them together in one big church together. So it was Vicenza gospel service, and that service started at 1. We also had the longest service. Our service went from 1 o'clock to 4. The only issue was we would never end at 4. We would be in there till 4:52, 4:26, and the Hispanic Heritage Catholic service would be right after ours. So half the time while we would be in church, they'd be all peeking in through the door and starting to walk in and gather in the back while we're still having church. Like, church used to be torture. We'd be in there all day. But the one thing I did like, I liked being in the kids choir because that was a lot of fun. Plus, the kids choir was actually really, really good. And I remember there were a few songs they would always let me lead, but my favorite was like this old, either it was Edwin or Walter Hawkins song, like this song Until I Found the Lord. I mean, you couldn't get me off that stage when it was time to do the kids choir. Like, I had so much fun doing that. I think that was probably, it wasn't the first time I ever like sang in front of people because my mom always had me participating in church as a child. So, at least since I was 4 or 5, I always had to be in the choir or be an usher. And I mean, I did all that at that church as well in Italy. Like, I was an usher, I was in the kids choir. I guess those were the main 2 things I was doing. But yeah, I used to have fun. I used to sing that. They used to make me sing this Hezekiah Walker song, 99 and a half. Like, if you grew up in the 90s, everybody knew that song if you were one of the church kids. And I think what made me enjoy it was the people in the congregation would gas you up. Even if you were off key or something, they sing, baby, you go boy. So, of course, like, you felt like you were a little mini celebrity. So that was one of the highlights of church, at least. Now, over time, I did start making my little mini circle of friends, but of course, your circle would change every year because people were always moving and coming and going. But for 3rd grade, the main kids I used to run with, there was this kid, James, I talked about in the Running Away episode. James was this kid. His mom was from London. And James was just off the radar. Like, James was so bad. Like, he was one of them kids that would just cuss his parents out, and you'd be at his house and y'all be playing like Nintendo, and his mom would say it's time to turn the game off, and he'd tell her to go straight to hell, and you'd be like, okay. And so I'm waiting for the mom to come in ready to karate chop and beat everybody, and nothing would happen. She would always just threaten to go get the wooden spoon. Would you like me to go get the wooden spoon, huh? Would you like me to get the wooden spoon, James? Would you like me to get the wooden spoon? I'm like, well, when you gonna go get it? Because he been cussing you out all week. And then eventually my mom was like, no, you ain't playing with him no more. And then I have my friend Ricky, who I'll talk about in another episode, probably 4th grade in Italy, because we were supposed to do the talent show together, but there was some trickery behind that, and that's a story in itself. He kicked me out of the boy band. And so there was Ricky, there was this kid Magic that lived next door to me, and his mom used to babysit my brother, and me and Magic also were in the choir together. Like, the cool thing about living in Villaggio was every kid that lived in Villaggio, you went to the same school, and if you went to church, you went to the same church as well. And speaking of church, because I forgot to add this bit in, like how I said that the different services were at the different hours, when we first got there, we didn't know that I guess the gospel service was at 1 o'clock. So the first time we went to, I think it was the Catholic service or whichever service where they light the candle. And that service was literally 30 minutes. I was like, oh my God, this is great. We can go here every Sunday, in and out. And you got a little snack and everything. And then the other part was the kids, we didn't even have to sit in the service. We went to the little children's portion of service, and, you get your little crackers and juice. You'd say the 10 Commandments, and we was up out of there. I was like, okay, hey. And then my mom found the gospel service. Oh no, we gonna be going to that one at 1 o'clock. So, we'd be in church till 4 o'clock. I'm like, Lord. Yeah, those are some good times. But there were some other moments. The only thing I hated about the neighborhood was that you didn't have dumpsters by your house, like the trash cans. So they had these big dumpsters at the end of the street, and you'd have to take the trash all the way out there. And for some reason, my parents would always wait till it was nighttime to tell me to take out the trash. And I would be so scared going out there because Italy can be kind of scary at night on that base because there's lots and lots of trees. And during certain times of the year, they have this big giant caterpillar migration. I can't explain it, but like you just see thousands of caterpillars just in mobs just everywhere, and there's so many of them that you can't avoid them, and cars have to run over them, and it's slimy and stuff like that. And so sometimes when you'd be at night trying to dump the trash, you'd step on one, like that crap would freak you out. And then it was already scary taking out the trash if you had to do it at night, because it was the equivalent of probably walking a block away from your house, literally. And on one side of Villaggio, on the outside of the neighborhood, was this big giant cornfield. On the other side, which would have been where our backyard was just this big giant space of like farmland. And there wasn't really like a real fence, it was just a little wire fence. And then on the other side of the base or of Villaggio was like a freeway. And so, we were on the side that was cornered to the cornfield and the farm, and so you'd hear all kind of weird animals and sounds. And man, I remember, if my parents made me take the trash out, I would sprint with that bag trying to dump that thing. And then don't let there be a raccoon on the trash can. You just sit the bag in front of it and run back to the house, like forget it. But I remember one time, it was during the daytime, and it was the summer, and I was walking and I was dumping the trash, and I'm holding the bag like how Santa holds, his presents, where he kind of has it over his shoulder, and I'm walking, and the bag is just swinging, and I'm walking, and I get to the trash can finally, or I'm almost to the trash can, and I feel something like soggy, like my whole sock feels soggy. So I'm like, oh Lord, the bag must have busted, and all the juices from the dinner and everything else must have rolled down my leg and into my sock. And so as I look down, I notice my whole sock is red, and that's not juice from food, that's blood. And I look, a piece of broken glass went through the outside of my left calf and pierced the other side. And so when I was swinging the bag, the glass must have stabbed me in the leg, and then when I swung it back, it must have came right back out, and I didn't notice it. I have no idea. I didn't feel a thing. I'm just sitting here walking, but the minute I saw the blood, I felt the pain, and then I looked at the bag, and I saw the piece of glass with the blood on it. I was like, oh my God, like it was the end of the world. I had to ask this random person who was walking by, could they put the trash in the dumpster for me, because I had no energy. I couldn't put the bag in the trash. And then I hopped all the way to the house on one foot because it hurt to step, and it didn't help that like my foot was just soggy. It's kind of like when you step in a puddle, that's what it felt like. And the water gets in your shoe, that's exactly what it felt like. And so I get home, my dad, who is just, gosh, he can be such a brute sometimes. I'm like, Dad, look what happened. He was, huh? Oh, go upstairs and get a Band-Aid. What? Go upstairs and get a Band-Aid? What? And the funniest thing, I had to hop up the stairs and get a Band-Aid out the bathroom. My dad didn't even move off the chair. Then he gonna try, and he told me to bring alcohol. Then he gonna try to put alcohol on it. I'm like, no, that burns. Well, I don't know what you want me to do. And so he tried to make me put a Band-Aid on it, because the gas was maybe about an inch long, maybe half a centimeter wide, because you could see the white meat in my calf. And on the inside, where it like came out of, because it went in the outside and came through the inside wound was a lot smaller. It was like a little tiny spot where you can see where the glass it came through with a little bit of blood dripping. But it was the left side, the outside of my calf, where it just looked, it was the worst. And so my dad put a little Band-Aid on it, and he's like, now you need to go somewhere and sit down. Huh? And so clearly he should have took me to the clinic or something. My mom got home, flipped out, because nobody, listen, when it comes to her babies, when one of us are hurt, the whole world has to stop. And so, she went and she took me to the clinic. They just gave me some gauze. I was fine. There weren't any arteries or veins or anything like that cut. And they're like, oh yeah, it'll close up really quick. So they put like some, I think it was peroxide. I swear it was peroxide and something else. And, gave me some little bandages, and that was that. And then I tell you what, my favorite thing about Italy at that time was Chinese food. I know that sounds really random, but that was the best Chinese food I've ever had. I don't even like Chinese food now because none of it tastes anything like what I had when I was in Italy. I don't know if it's because they use different oils and different things that they cook with, but that was the best Chinese food I've ever had. It didn't matter what restaurant we went to, like, the food was just so good. I'm like, this is off the chain. Because to be honest, I didn't like Italian pizza at all when I first tried it. Because of course, my taste buds were, pretty much calibrated to what we did in America. So, I was used to Pizza Hut and Domino's and Anthony's Pizza and Papa Murphy's. And well, we don't claim Papa John's now because, Papa John tripping. But, I was used to that. So we went to that Italian restaurant, and the first time I tried it, and mind you, they made it on a little fire grill, and you saw them make it with the real tomatoes and the mozzarella, because they make all kind of cheeses and stuff in Italy, and all of everything. And I think I just had a regular pepperoni pizza. I've been to that crab. What is this? And I was pissed off because, of course, your whole childhood, once you found out what Italy was, that's all they gassed Italy up about was spaghetti and pizza. Pizza this, pizza that, pizza this, pizza this. And so I was like, wait a minute, y'all told me that this was going to be the best thing. I was disgusted. The rage. First, I couldn't understand the crust because the crust was thin. It wasn't like Pizza Hut. And of course, Pizza Hut and all that is trash looking back now. But at the time, for a third grader, Pizza Hut was the say-all, be-all of pizza, followed by Domino's and everything else afterwards, and Little Caesars. So whatever this crap was that I ate, I was like, this is not pizza. And people were eating it with a fork and a knife. I was so confused. It was so nasty. I eventually it grew on me later down the line. But when I first got to Italy that first year, I didn't like any of the food. I didn't like half the stuff. I would not try anything new. And my dad used to be like, you gotta try new things. Like, you gotta understand, this is where you live. You're gonna regret these days when you get older if you don't try it. Because, like I said, being on the base was like being in America. So, I could get Burger King. And at the time, my dad had many jobs on the base. I remember he started out working at the commissary, and then he worked at the Burger King. And then from the Burger King, he worked at the self-help store in the neighborhood. Like, that was the other thing. It was kind of tough for adults who were not in the military to figure out what to do with themselves. If, because, you got to give up your career and everything else like that to move to another country. And then there's not a lot of jobs available. And so you got to take what you can get. And so when he worked at Burger King, I used to always beg him to bring extra stuff home when he got off his shift. And, man, that food, I couldn't stand it. And literally, once I discovered that most of the Italian restaurants had chicken nuggets and fries, that's what I would order every time, no matter where I went. And then I gradually moved into ragu spaghetti, because they had that, and I guess they must have knew they were going to be spoiled little American kids like me who were going to be too good to eat the food. And so that whole first year, if it wasn't Chinese food, don't worry about it. I'm not eating it unless it's something that I know I can find in America. And so I didn't like the pizza. I wasn't crazy over the spaghetti. But it did grow on me over time. And it didn't help our class, in Mr. Robertshaw's class. One day we were going to have a pizza party, and I was so excited until they brought that nasty Italian pizza. What? Really? Ugh. I didn't even like the smell of it. Like, everything about it just used to piss me off. Ooh, I get mad just thinking about it. But it ended up, I would appreciate it now. But I think what it was is I didn't like the tomato sauce. Here, what we do in America, the sauce is really pasty. Theirs was real tomato. So they would have like tomato, and it was very liquidy, juicy, it wasn't a dense paste. It was very watery almost. And that with the combination of the mozzarella, I was like, If I had a favorite memory from that first year in Italy, as far as third grade, it actually probably was the summer after. We went to Livorno, Italy, which is probably 30 minutes from Pisa, where the Leaning Tower is. And in Livorno, there was another military base called Camp Darby. And Camp Darby was actually on the beach. And so they had campgrounds, and then the beach was right there. And so our whole family, plus some friends that my parents had made while we were living there, we all went, and we went camping. That was a whole lot of fun. Me and this kid Rashad, me and him had a ball. And the way that the beach was set up, there was a section of the beach that was, I guess, it was called American Beach. And so it was the portion for the military people. And then once you got out of those borders, it was the Italian beach. And so me and Rashad had wandered off at the beach, and somehow we ended up at some hot body contest. And I saw things that I shouldn't have been seeing at that age. It was the craziest thing. I remember the music playing, and it was some little house music song that sampled the Jacksons' Can You Feel It? I don't even remember the song, but I just remember that dun 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 dun. And so you kept seeing all these different women coming in with these big, giant breasts, and they would just go and shake and shimmy, and then the tops would come off, because of course in Italy, with some of the beaches, they could be nude and everything like that. And me and Rashad had wandered off. We weren't where we were supposed to be. And so I'm looking, there's breasts flying and flopping everywhere, and the women are all oiled up and dancing, and me and them were just standing there watching, and no adult made us leave. That was the most interesting thing. We couldn't understand what was going on, because everything was in Italian that the people were saying, and they're just getting it in. I was like, what is going on? I remember and then there were guys in it too, which was a little weird. There was some guy who randomly grabbed this bottle of ketchup and just poured it all over him. I was like, what the heck? All right, I think it's time for us to go. But yeah, we stayed and watched the whole hot body contest. And I remember who won. It was this blonde lady who had this blue bikini on, and she took off the bikini, and one of her breasts were pierced. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. Oh my God. And it was so funny because Rashad at this point is like, he has his eyes covered. He's like, we gotta get out of here before we get in trouble. And I done got a glimpse. But that was some entertainment in itself. I don't even know how our parents didn't notice that we had wandered off. Because, Marcus, I think, because Marcus was probably 2 at that point, I think my mom had Marcus, and she was kind of with him in the water. And then my dad was probably chilling, doing the little grill and everything like that. Me and Rashad just, we just kept walking. And somehow we wandered off the American part of the beach, and we were in the Italian part of the beach. And yeah, so there was the big hot body contest. And yeah, I was like, okay, interesting. So, Italy, the first year was interesting. The first year was not really that great. To be honest, I really want to go back to America. I miss my family. School did get better. And actually, Italy became much better in the following 2 years. But it was just that first year was, God, it was a transition. Mr. Robert Shaw was just absolutely the worst. Paul ended up moving during third grade. Thank God, because I was tired of fighting him every other day. That was getting exhausting. And there were some highlights that came out of that time period as far as third grade. But overall, that first year was rough. It was a rough switch. And the cool thing, and I think the biggest lesson I learned out of that first year was recognizing that there really is a world outside of the world that you live in. You know what I mean? We have these wonderful safe bubbles that we create for ourselves and that we're used to, and we forget that when you step out, the world is totally different and everything doesn't align the way that you want it to, and things don't stop because of your discomfort. I appreciate that era because I appreciate that road trip. My dad, pretty much, I got to see half of the country just riding in the car. Like, that's one of the great memories, riding in that Jeep Cherokee, and it had a 5-disc changer. Boy, we get them CDs going, get it cranking, and just listening to the good music and stopping at the restaurants and the hotels and everything. And those are memories I think I always hold on to, because to be honest, I really do miss my father. It sucks that he died when I was 26, but life happens, and so it's always good to have those memories you can hold on to. But yeah, so that's the first episode of Italy. The next episode surrounding Italy will be about 4th grade and that Ratchet Talent show that I told you about, where I got kicked out of the boy band, which, boy, I got some stories for that. Anyway, until next time.